Yeah, great stuff happening all over the church, and it's great to see a video like that. And we don't often get to see what our students are doing. So it was a warm day in July of 1961, and 35 or so players from the Green Bay Packers had reconvened together for their first day of training camp to prepare for the new season. They had just come off a devastating loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, which had cost them the NFL championship. They were expecting to take things to the next level. They're here going, okay, we lost, but we're high-level players. What are the secrets that we can learn about how to become a better team? How do we recover from this? How do we take our elite status up just one more notch? And so they're expecting to get all this specialized training to make them better. But that's not what the players experienced that first day when their coach, the legendary Vince Lombardi, got up to speak to them. And if you know the story, then you know that when Lombardi got up in front of all these professional, highly trained, championship-level players, he simply held up a pigskin in his hand, and he started off by saying, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And from there, they started going over the fundamentals of the game, the basics, blocking, tackling, and all of the things that it would take to play the game at its most basic level and to win the game. And so 6 months later, the Green Bay Packers would go on to win the NFL championship, defeating the New York Giants 37-0. And they would go on in subsequent seasons to continue to dominate during that time when Lombardi was the coach. And so as we start a new series today on this series we're in, Put Me In, Coach, I'd like to kind of start with a similar statement and say what we're going to talk about today is basically, ladies and gentlemen, this is a church. At its most basic level, at its most fundamental level, without getting into all of the particulars, we want to start from the beginning and say, what is this thing supposed to be that we're even doing? Why are we here? And what are we supposed to do? And what does it look like to win? How do we know that we're winning? How do we know that we're making any progress? How do we know that we're doing what we're supposed to do, we'd be doing and prevailing? So, what does that actually mean? You know, the word church, in its just basic definition, comes from the Greek word ekklesia, and it just means assembly. It's not a building. You can Google the word church and click on images, and it'll show you buildings, but that's not what a church is. It's not build. The building is just what houses the church. The church is a gathered people. It's you and me together. We just have a building around us. But we're not just gathered to gather, because there's lots of assemblies out there. We're gathered for a particular purpose, and when all is said and done, the ultimate goal, the ultimate objective is to glorify God. Like, that's it. So at the end of the day, is God glorified? If God's glorified, that's kind of why we're here. So when something is glorified, that means that what it is truly like is made known. There's nothing hidden. It's exposed. It's revealed. When you were born, you entered this world in all your glory, right? There was nothing hidden when you were born. Then that's the way that it is. It's just like the glory is revealed. And so the glory of God is to be revealed through the church. So if you look, for example, at 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, look at what it says here. But you are a chosen race, that's who you are, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession. Why? You may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So you were called, you were chosen, set apart for the purpose of proclaiming to everyone the excellencies of God, the glory of God, the beauty and wonder and grace and majesty of God, so it is not hidden anymore in the earth. The other thing interesting about this is, notice it's collective. It's not individual. We don't do this as individuals. We're a chosen race, a holy nation, a people, right? So if you're watching on live stream, and I'm glad you are, if you are watching on live stream, if you're watching because maybe you're sick or maybe you're out of town, or maybe it's your first time, just you're checking churches out, and like, before I go there and like see what these crazy people do, I want to watch from afar. That's smart. That's what I would do. That's why we do live streams. We give you a little preview. That's great. But if live stream is your whole experience, and you're like down the street, that's not an assembly. That's not really an assembly, right? We assemble together because, as crazy as the church can be, at its core, it's a gathered people, a new society to proclaim his excellencies. So the whole purpose of church, if the whole objective is to glorify God, to bring him glory so that people will realize his beauty and his mercy and his grace and his kindness and his goodness, and that he rules the earth, or he rightfully should, then how do we do that? Like, what are the plays that we run? Like, how do you play the game? Like, what do you do? Well, then, to get that answer, we just go back to the fundamentals then. We go back to this very simplistic thing of what we're here to do in the first place. And to get the answer to that, we look at the very end of the book of Matthew, when Jesus has been crucified, he rose from the dead, and now he's just about to ascend to heaven. Did you ever wonder why Jesus just didn't take the disciples with him? Wouldn't that have been so nice? You know what? Let's go to paradise. The thief on the cross got to go to paradise. Let's go there now. Why make them die martyrs' deaths, 11 out of the 12 disciples? Why make them go through suffering and persecution? Why put them through all that when Jesus got to go ascend to heaven? Why did he leave his followers here? Well, the answer is very simple. We find it in Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 to 20, when he speaks his last words to his disciples. This is the play for every Christian and the play for every church from now until the time Jesus returns. And it says, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. In other words, what I'm about to ask you to do, I'm going to help you, and I have the authority and power to be able to do it, so don't worry. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And then just to repeat, like bookends, what he just said before, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. That's it. That's it. Therefore, go and make disciples. Like, that's the only thing that you have to do. Notice what he didn't say. Therefore, go and read the Bible. Nothing wrong with reading the Bible. That's part of making disciples, but that's not the goal of the Christian life is not to learn more about the Bible. It's not to simply attend church. It's not to hold on to traditions. It is to make disciples. That's the only thing he commanded us to do. That's it. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is what a church should be. This is what a church should do. Very simple, right? Simple, but not easy. So, don't do anything else. So in other words, you're gonna make disciples. Notice he didn't say, go and protest all the things that you're mad about in society. That's not the purpose of the church either. Go and get involved in all these things that don't really center on making disciples. So what is a disciple anyway? What do we mean by disciple? Well, a disciple is really easy. What a disciple is simply is a follower. A follower. In fact, the original word is the word mathetes, is where we get our word mathematics from. Pattern, right? It's a pattern. So you follow, and so the followers when they have rabbis back in the day, they would follow so close to their teacher that they said the dust of the rabbi would get on them. Like they're walking in the dirt, and the dust of the rabbi would be on, and they would want the dust of the rabbi to be all over them because that's how close they would follow. So that's what a disciple is. Not a follower of you or of me, but of Jesus. And so we said a couple weeks ago that it's not just about believing in Jesus, because, the Bible says even the demons believe that there's a guy named Jesus who walked on the earth and who said some stuff and who died on a cross. Most people would acknowledge the historical reality of that. The question is not, do I believe in Jesus? The question is, do I believe Jesus? Do I believe him what he says? So he says, do not be anxious about your life, because look at the birds. God feeds the birds. If he feeds the birds, then you're worth more than the birds. Sorry, but you are. So don't worry, you'll be okay. Yeah, he meant those people way back then, but not my situation. My situation is worthy of anxiety. Really? I mean, because he said, don't be anxious about your life. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Well, I mean, he wasn't talking about my enemies, right? Because my enemies are really bad. He said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So it's not, do I just believe that he said it? Do I believe it's true? And that is the question, right? That's the rub. That's like that's the day in, day out journey of discipleship. Okay, you said to do this. Am I going to do it? So a disciple is somebody who follows Jesus and follows him in obedience, but it's not just an obedience that means following a bunch of rules, because when the Spirit of God comes into our lives, things change. Our desires begin to change. What we want changes. And that's the crazy part about Christianity. You don't want the things that you used to want. I mean, yeah, we're always going to struggle with sin, but sin looks darker and less desirable after a while. We go, okay, maybe there's certain proclivities I have in my flesh, but the reality is I see the emptiness of it all. I see the futility of it all. I don't want it like I used to want it. I don't even understand that. But the Holy Spirit of God comes into me and makes changes into my life to where the things that I go after begin to change. And so I start having the fruit of the Spirit flow out of my life: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. The things that the Apostle Paul says, against such things, there's no law. There's no law against more patience. I noticed you were having more patience over there. We're going to throw you in jail. You can't make a law against patience. You can't make a law against self-control. And when those things are present in a person's life, that person becomes more attractive. That person becomes someone that even the most non-believing person in the world goes, I want to hang out with you. You just, you're living how you were, somehow how we were intended to live. And you don't even necessarily, we don't always know why, but there's something about you. As you're surrendering your life to Jesus, you become easier to be around. You become someone that other people just sense that there's life and truth and joy, and they just want to be around that, right? The world becomes a better place. I don't mean the whole world. I mean the area in which you occupy. So we glorify God by making disciples. That's it. We are here to glorify God by making disciples. Now, is that your official mission statement? No, that's not the official mission statement of Mountain Life Church. That's any church at all that proclaims to know Jesus and be about what the Bible is about. The whole reason that we're here, it's not for anything else but to make disciples, to help people follow Jesus Christ. That's it. Pretty simple, right? And why is that? Because really, at the end of the day, that's what God's after. We're after the same thing that God is after. God is here. He's revealing himself to the world. He's making his grace and mercy known, and he asks us to be a part of that. In fact, listen to this. There's this guy named Christopher Wright, and I love this book. He wrote a book called The Mission of God. And listen to what he says, because I've really appreciated this quote. He said, it's not so much the case that God has a mission for his church in the world, but that God has a church for his mission in the world. Mission was not made for the church was made for mission, God's mission. In other words, it's not like God's going, well, we have to have church, so, we have to get people together and build these cathedrals and do all this stuff, so what are we going to have them do? No, it's the opposite. God says, I'm here to go after, to seek and save that which was lost. I'm here to reclaim my glory, to let the whole world know that I am God. What's the best way to make that happen? I know, church. We're going to gather people. The people are going to do it. Hey, you and I said, well, that's crazy. Like the church? Really? I mean, because if you hang around the church long enough, it's going to break your heart. It's broken mine. I've been in it for my whole life. I love it, but man, it can beat you up because there's a lot of imperfect people trying to do something really crazy. And we stumble along the way, don't we? Because it's a spiritual battle and everything else. So in other words, the church is God's plan A. There is no plan B. Like you used to go, God's got to come with something better. There's no better plan that he has than all of us gathered together, trying to make his name known. That's the plan. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. So what's the goal? So if the goal is to glorify God, and we do that by making disciples, then in a sense we know we're winning when we're making disciples. So it's really simple. So like you just go, is Mountain Life like Mountain Life Church? I mean, is it prevailing? Well, you know, this is like the litmus test. You look around and go, does it seem like people here are looking and acting more like Jesus? That's qualitative. It's quantitative. Is God bringing people, or are people going, I don't want to be around that bunch of people? No, they're like, if people are coming and keep being interested, and if the people that are coming aren't just showing up, but there's changes in our lives, we're looking and acting more like Jesus, reminding people of the glory of God. When you see that happening, you go, maybe God's at work. It's really, really not complicated at all. And he says, go into all nations. The nice thing about the situation that we're in now is we have a lot of nations coming here. We send a lot of resources and people to different countries around the world, but we have a lot of nations coming right here. And so we have a Spanish-speaking ministry that meets in the loft at 1045 that's growing and reaching people that are just arriving here. And you and I don't know the circumstances of their arrival, and we can debate all day the issues surrounding that, but I can tell you, isn't it kind of cool that if we're having people come from other nations, that they would find and follow Jesus? That's a good thing. That's a good thing for everybody. So that's what we want. And so Pastor Ruben and Arelis are leading a Spanish-speaking ministry here to address the fact that we have people around us who are in that category and respond to that ministry. Now, notice what I haven't talked about yet when we talk about church. What have we haven't talked about? We've not talked about music style, meeting times, length of service, how we do communion, what's announced, whether we have announcements, who does announcements, membership, lighting, sound, all that stuff. All the stuff we like to fight over. Guess what? It's not in the Bible. Well, you got to have church on this time, and this should be this long, and it should have, and this is the color you should paint your building, and this is the type of music you should have, and these are the amount of singers, and this. Really? It's nowhere in the Bible. Just says sing some songs, preach the word of God, baptize people. You know, that's what a church service should kind of look like, and love each other, and look like Jesus. How you do that is going to really depend on your context, isn't it? But if we keep the goal of making disciples, if we know that, like, ladies and gentlemen, this is a football. This is church, okay? It's not all this fancy stuff. We're making disciples. How we do that then, everything else should be ordered around the best way to make that happen, right? So how we do our music, how we do the service, the kind of things that we do is not just because it's preference, it's because it's following a principle. And the principle is making disciples. We go, is this the best way for us to make disciples? So the questions we're asking now at Mountain Life are, okay, we're like, we do this. Is that the best way we can be making disciples? If it's not, gone. You know, it's not that we don't ever, but we're supposed to be about tradition. No, we are about tradition. The tradition that's in the Bible, make disciples. It's like the first tradition. And everything else changes as how we adapt, right? So we got to be thinking that way. We got to also understand the difference between preference and principle. A lot of things that we think are principles are actually preferences. The way that we do things. Is that really a principle, or is it just what I'm used to? Is it just what makes me comfortable? And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with preferences. But we have to understand the difference. And there will be times that we'll need to lay down our preferences in order to achieve the principle. I have. There's been times in my life, I'm 50 years old. And there's things that, like, when I was younger, I was like, church should be like this. And then I go, no, actually, that's not the best way to do it anymore, because that doesn't seem to be as effective as it once was. So how often do we, right? We have people go, oh, you got to have a pipe organ in church. Why? Because the disciples had a pipe organ in church. No, the pipe organ was super cool 300 years ago. It was. Pipe organs, come on. I walked into a building one time, didn't know they had an organ, and they started playing it. Brrr, and I had a heart attack almost. And where did that thing come from? Those are cool. But you know what? honestly, when you leave here, are you gonna turn on your iTunes and listen on whatever in your car and listen to pipe organ? No, you're not. Don't lie. Oh, I love the pipe organ. There's one of you, or two of you that might like the pipe organ because you're very sophisticated or whatever else. Most of you are not. Not that you're sophisticated, you just don't like the pipe organ. I'm just saying. What am I trying to say? That the music we have here is going to speak the language of the community in which we live and try to resonate with the people around us. Nothing wrong with that. So I'll just give you an example of that. The music we do, the ministries we have, the facilities we build, all that is contribute to making disciples because that's what we're called to do. And all we really want to do is just eliminate the static. Like, you know what? This doesn't make sense. This isn't working. So this is actually a really great opportunity. So it also is what drives our risk posture. Did you know that the vast majority, because I work with churches in our denomination that this church is a part of, so I have the opportunity to work with several hundred congregations spread out about over 7 states. And I can tell you this, when I work with churches, more churches close with money in the bank than they do broke. There are churches that close with millions of dollars in the bank and paid off facilities. You know why? It's kind of like Rocky III. It's one of the best movies ever made in all of the world. I tear up every time I think about that movie. But remember Rocky III? And Mr. T challenges Rocky. And then Mickey's like, no way, Rocky, you're not fighting him. And Rocky's like, why not, man? He's no different than anybody else. He said, no, he's hungry. He's hungry. You lost your edge. You lost the fight. And you, somewhere along the line, you started protecting what you had rather than going after what you were there to do. And that's me paraphrasing him. He wasn't that eloquent, I don't think, Mickey. But Mickey's like, no way. This guy over here, he knows what he wants. He's going after you. And this is the key line. He says, it's the worst thing that could happen to any fighter. You got civilized. You got civilized. And you lost it. Jesus says the similar thing to the church at Ephesus in Revelation when he says, you guys are doing great, you're holding up under persecution, but I have this against you. You've lost your first love. You've lost the thing that gave you that fight at the beginning. And all you're thinking about now is preserving what you have. And we see churches do that all the time. How in the world could you, because, and I know there's churches I'm working with right now that they go, well, we have to keep all these things going, and we're going to sell this piece of property, and we're going to do this because we can't afford, because it doesn't really work anymore. No one's responding to it, but we don't want to give it up. So we're just going to finance it by just liquidating assets slowly. It happens. Because somewhere along the way, we lost the mission of making disciples. And so we aren't bold anymore. We don't take risks anymore. We're afraid of losing what we got. We can't ever be like that. We can't ever be like that. We always have to be like, kind of have that spirit of going, okay, God, what do you have for us next? Forgetting the past. The past, we can hold on to some wonderful things in the past, but remember the past is the past and we go forward. So he says, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them. You see that? Let's put the verse back up on the screen again. So baptizing them. So when you see a church that's baptizing people, you know, okay, maybe God's doing something here. That's what's going to happen right here, August 25th. And Ben just announced it. I'm going to throw these back on the screen. So you have the QR code. We're going to baptize people next week, next Sunday. And if you are interested in that, all you got to do is hold your phone up, and hopefully that QR code will work. I tested it. I think it worked for me. And you can write your name on there or fill out your name, and we can get in touch with you, and you can get baptized right here next week. We're also planning on doing another baptism in September because people are coming to faith in Jesus, and they want to proclaim it. Now, being baptized doesn't make you a Christian. It's a symbol that you've become a Christian. Just like wearing a wedding ring doesn't make you married. It's a symbol that you are married. But it's a proclamation. And most people are not going to stand up in front of a whole bunch of other people, you know, in their kind of awkward swimsuit, you know, standing up there on a Sunday morning and be willing to go under the water and get all wet if they don't actually believe this. And so when you see young people and adults People old enough to know, they're not, in other words, it's great to, find if you were baptized as a baby, that's wonderful. Your parents did that as a kind of a dedication for you to the Lord. That's beautiful. That's fine. But the baby didn't do anything. The baby had no kind of choice in the matter. When you see people that have a choice in the matter, wanting to willingly get in the water, that's when you know maybe God's up to something, right? So the second thing it says is not only baptizing people, but teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. How is that happening at Mountain Life? So what are the things that Mountain Life's doing to try to help make that happen? Well, as you also saw in the announcement, so I'll put it back up on the screen, we're kicking off something called Rooted. Many of you have been through this, but many of you have not. And by the way, this isn't my idea. It was something that was in place before I ever showed up, and I checked it out, and I knew where it came from, and I'm like, this is awesome. This is great stuff. So you get one of these books if you sign up for this thing. It's a nice book too. It's hardbound, and it's got a lot of words in it. Wow, Tim, tell me something else that I don't know. But so you might go, well, I'm not a reader. Well, this is really simple, and it's like a 10-week thing, and you just read a little bit. And yeah, is it a little bit rigorous? Yeah, but I mean, look at you all. I mean, I have a lot of faith in you. I mean, you guys, there's not a whole lot of underachievers around here, is what I've come to know. So anyway, this is not hard. But you should, if you haven't done it, I want to challenge you to do it. Because it's going to go through things like questions like, who is God? How does God speak to us? Where is God in the midst of suffering? Do you know the answer to those questions? One of the biggest reasons why people don't believe in God is because they go, well, where was God when my aunt died or whatever? It's like, well, there's actually an answer for that. But you just use it as a way to say, I don't want to believe in God anymore. But so there's very practical stuff, and you have behaviors that again begin to change how you live your life. So it's not just show up here every Sunday and, hopefully a little osmosis and you'll feel better afterwards, a little shot in the arm. No, this is actually gets you around people in a group. So I just want to chat, by scanning the QR code, it doesn't automatically enroll you, and even going to the dinner doesn't automatically enroll you. You can check it out, but this is what we're doing. We're doing this. And there's other life groups as well, but you just need to know that this is the easiest way for you to make a significant difference in your own personal spiritual life. And so it's already up and going. And so I want to, so when you say, well, how are you guys making disciples? This is one way. Okay? Because this is going to, and not just the reading, but the result of the reading, right? How it changes your life. So I want to challenge you to do it. And I want you to see that this is what's happening here. And I like this because it's just simple. But it doesn't end there. There's other ways we're teaching people to obey. We want to give our kids the best type of children's ministry we can. We want to give them the best shot at knowing Jesus, right? So, because we understand this, you can't kid-proof the world, but you can world-proof your kid. I didn't make that up, by the way. I read that. It's a good line. Don't think I made that up, but I'm like, that's good. That's good. And so it's not just about we don't babysit kids here. No, absolutely not. I mean, maybe the nursery, here you go, which is awesome. You should utilize the nursery. But I'm just saying, we want our kids at the youngest possible age to begin to get oriented to who they are and who Jesus is and everything else. It's very intentional. And some of you have a gift, and we need that gift in the children's ministry to make a difference, because we got a lot of kids coming. We got other things as well. You saw the student ministry. The most challenging, difficult time in a person's life is that age of 12 to 18. It's like everything goes haywire in your life and you're wondering which end is up. It's like, this is crazy. And you know what? We're trying to address and meet those needs as well. By the way, and we got a whole bunch of other things. We got divorce care, trauma care workshop, ways to help people figure out, meet them at the point of need, and be able to help find solutions that are Christ-centered. We got Man Camp coming up. You heard about that? Next Sunday after the service, this will be a big Sunday next Sunday. You better just buckle up. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have baptisms, and then after the service, we're going to have something called a ministry fair where you can go out and you can see all the different ways that you can jump in and be involved at the church. And again, not obligating you, but just opening the doors for you because we need you. And we're going to even have hot dogs is what I heard too. So, hey, that's awesome. So that's the game. That's it. Make disciples. So my question for you is, are you in? Are you in? We took our daughter yesterday. We moved our daughter into Boise State University this past couple days. Boy, that'll rip your heart right out of your chest. Youngest one, last one. So we go home empty nesters. So anyway, I don't want to talk about that anymore. But that's us. That's us on the football field at Boise State. Now, when I say Boise State, the first thing everyone thinks of is what? The blue field. The blue field, right? That's what you think of, which is so weird. You know, it's like, it's a blue football field. And it's kind of funny because the president, when we had the orientation, she got up there and she said, the president of the university, she's a fantastic woman, and she said, you know, every football field in America is green, and someone at Boise State just randomly came along and said, you know, it's artificial turf. It doesn't have to be green. It's fake, right? So why don't we just make it blue? And they're like, hey, that's a good idea. And so they made it blue, and it's like basically, you can color your field another color, but everybody knows you're just kind of ripping off Boise State. So they kind of coined the whole concept of an other than green football field. Everybody knows it. And so because of that, in fact, when she said, she goes, we actually call it, we have a term for it. We call it blue turf thinking. Yeah, in other words, and I'm sitting there going, I like this. Because it's like, it's out of the box. It's like, the goal isn't to have a green football field. The goal is to win football games. And actually, the real goal is to get notoriety for the school. Honestly, that's why you have a good football team, is to raise the awareness of the school, and then people want to come. And so, like, that's really the goal. So how do we do that? Well, we don't need a green football field. Let's make a blue football field, and then we'll stand out. That's brilliant. And so they're like, how do we do that in other ways? And I went, wow, that's interesting. How do we apply that at Mountain Life? And, oh, yeah, you can see. So you can't probably see us in the picture, but we're right in the center there. But that was us on the field. And so here's the thing. And I like that because I want us to think that way too. But even more than that, when I was standing on the field, so the whole culmination is like, hey guys, hey parents, come in, say goodbye to your kid, and you get to go on the blue football field. And we were like, oh, we get to go on the blue. It's a football field, but it's blue, right? And we got to go on the blue. They don't let everybody or anybody go on the blue field. You have to be special and give them lots of money. So fine. So we go, everyone's just so excited to go on the blue field. So I walk out on the blue field. And with all these other people, and I'm walking out there. I'm like, whoa, I'm on the blue field. And now, just so you know, like, I'm not a football player. I know that comes as a shock to many of you. You're like, really? No, God did not give me the gifts and abilities and size to be a football player. So I have to do other things. But here's the thing. I go on that football field, and you know what I'm thinking? I'm like, as soon as I step and I walk out, I go, whoa, this is cool. In my mind, I'm thinking, can you imagine being a 19-year-old young guy all suited up with all the stands and people screaming like crazy? I'm like, what would it be like to be on this field, right? And the opposing teams right there. I mean, like, you just have the adrenaline going, like, that'd be so amazing to be on the blue field. It'd be so much more fun than where I'm gonna only ever be, which is in the stands. A lot of us are gonna live our lives in the stands when it comes to our Christianity. And that's not where the game is. That's not where the action is. It's on the field. And I'm asking you to get on the field. We need you on the field. But I'm no good. There's no better way to get good than to say, I'm gonna be on the field. There's no better way to learn something than to teach it. There's no better way to grow in godliness than to know that someone is looking at you in order to be more godly. Well, how do I become more like Jesus? Bring along someone else and say, follow me as I follow Christ, and then see how your life changes. Because it's not about me, and it's not even about the staff. That's a cul-de-sac. There's only so many things we can do. It's about you. It's about us making disciples, each one of us. That's the challenge. And that's what I want to leave you with. It's real simple, make disciples. Are you in? Because we're going. I mean, it's like, it's happening right now, and we need you. Let's pray together. God, on behalf of this congregation, I want to say the phrase, put me in, coach. Put me in. I don't want to be on the stands anymore. God, you give us a real simple mandate. Go and make disciples. And as you go, you don't have to leave anywhere. It's as you go, as you're just living your life. Make a disciple. So God, I pray that this church would be known, especially as we move into fall 2024, spring 2025, as people start school, as we get back into regular habits and practices of our lives, and winter comes and all the fun that comes with that. God, I pray that we would not be distracted by the wonder of this place, but that we would leverage it for the mission. We would leverage it for what not only you've called us to do, but what you are up to in the world. You're calling people to yourself every week, and God, may you use this church to do that. And God, help us to get out of the way of what you're trying to do. God, help us to be honest about the things we need to do to be able to be the type of church that isn't just about preserving tradition or doing things the way, because that's the way we've always done them, but to say, what are you calling us to now? So God, give us creative minds, give us courage so we can see you do amazing things. And we can look back on these days as days like no other. Thank you for giving us this incredible calling. God, may we take care of it and steward it well. In Jesus' name, amen.